Hi guys, this is Miss Barron from your Civics and Economics class, and this is a digital video of information that we've been doing in class with the foundation documents that become part of the American government. I'm going to specifically be going over the significance of these documents as far as what they may ask you on tests and quizzes. Make sure that on your notes that you're highlighting the key things that I'm talking about today in this video. Listen to it a couple times, as that more than likely is what's going to end up being on your test or quiz. So the first thing you need to know is about these documents. They are all primary sources. What are primary sources? They are sources that the person who wrote it actually was there when it happened, and they witnessed it, and they wrote right away what they saw. Why is this important? Because you don't get like a he said, she said. You don't get a third party hand of what happened. This is actually somebody that saw this happen, that had a witness to it, and that literally wrote about it. And in the case of these documents, most of these documents, these are actually the authors and the documents themselves. Now, why is this important? Well, one, these were the documents that our founding fathers, when they sat down to try to come up with a new type of government to create the United States government that we have today, used as a basis of good examples in their writing to create our new government. That's what you need to know. The problem with them is they're old. They were written over 200 years ago or more, and people don't speak or write like they did 200 years ago, so they're very difficult to read. But in your cases, for tests and EOCs and exams, teachers love to use sentences and essays from them to see if you understand the document and its purpose. So they may give you a sentence and ask which document would this be from, and you have to understand the significance of the document to know that what the author is saying in those particular sentences relates back to the document. Okay, so that is why we are taking the time to look at these documents. And the documents that we are talking about are the John Peter Zenger trial, the Magna Carta, the Fundamental Orders of Connecticut, the Virginia House of Burgesses, the English Bill of Rights, the Maryland Toleration Act, and the Mayflower Compact. Now, in class, your group was to name the document, the date and place the document was created, the author of the document, the audience that was intended for the document, and the purpose. I'm not going to go over each and every one of those things, as you were supposed to do that on your digital copy or your handout copy of this document. However, what I am going to do is I'm going to make sure that I highlight the significance of these things. So if I mention something in this video, make sure you have it written either in the box for significance, or that you have mentioned it or highlighted it in the other boxes, because that would be important and will probably pop up on our test or a quiz. Okay? So we're going to start with the first one. These are all in chronological order of time. The first one is the Magna Carta. Now, the Magna Carta did not take place in America, because America did not exist in 1215. And of all these documents, I don't think you need to know the date of any of them except for the Magna Carta. 1215 is the Magna Carta. It was written in England. It was written in England by nobles of England, which would not be you and me today. In fact, it'd be wealthy landowners, or the 1% of the population. And it was against King John. King John was abusing his power. He was taxing people unnecessarily. He was taking away their land, throwing them in jail for unfair reasons. And so the nobles rise up against King John and write this document. This is important because it's the first time that the people limit the power of a monarchy or a king. It's the first time that people say a king does not have the divine right, that God did not give the power to the king, but the people gave the power to the king. Hence, the social contract, that the power of the government rests in the hands of the people. John Locke. And in this case, it wasn't all people, it was just the nobles, but the purpose was, for the first time, to limit the power of the king. And this becomes the slow but immediate downfall of the monarchy as we know it in England and in Europe. Okay, the monarchy still exists, but they're mostly figureheads. It's the first time that there's a council of nobles that checks the power of the king, so the king does not have absolute supreme power anymore. And some of the things that they were accusing the king of included, if they are accused of a crime, they must be able to see the witness that's accusing them and hear what that witness is saying. That you have to be judged by your peers, a jury by your peers, not just one person that makes an absolute decision and throws you in jail without a key. That you cannot cannot be denied or delayed justice. In other words, the king cannot at a whim just throw you in jail. There has to be some type of due process to that. Now again, the Magna Carta initially does not have to do with most people. It only has to do with the nobles. But over time, more and more people apply the Magna Carta to them as well. Because if the nobles deserve these rights, then all people deserve these rights. So that is the significance of this document and why it applies to the American government. The first governing document in America was actually the Mayflower Compact. So the Pilgrims sail across the ocean blue, right? And they land in Plymouth, Massachusetts. And before they get off the ship, after they've been on that ship for so many months, they say, hey, we need to sit down and decide how we're going to organize ourselves and govern ourselves in this new uncharted wilderness. So the people sit down and they write a document, a contract, a social contract, okay? So a compact is another word for contract. They write it on board the Mayflower and they say, all of us pilgrims are going to agree together, direct democracy, to make decisions for our community together, and that it's for the glory of God and the advancement of the Christian faith and honor the king, our first colony. Why? Because we want to escape religious persecution. We want religious freedom. However, we only want religious freedom if everyone agrees with our religion, no one different. So it's for preservation of the body politic to constitute a framework of just laws. It's the first social contract for a government in the American colonies. And you had to be male, you had to belong to the church, and you had to own land to be those voting members in the Mayflower Compact. But it is the first government contract in America. Government for the people. John Locke. Then we have Virginia. You got to remember that Virginia and Massachusetts was different. Massachusetts would settle for religious freedom. Virginia was settled mainly for profit. So in the South, we have the lords and proprietors that put money up so that they could have a profitable colony, growing cash crops to therefore make more money. However, the problem was the colonists that lived in Virginia, if they had a grievance, they would have to be heard by a judge that was only in England. So they would either have to get on a boat, go back to England to hear their grievances, or they'd have to draft letters and documents to be then sent across the Atlantic Ocean to England to be heard by a judge whose decision would then go back on a ship and come back. Long, timely process. So in 1621, Virginia, the treasurer, the council, and the company decide that the people of Virginia need a governing body in Virginia. And the way they set up their governing body is they call it burgesses. This is a house of representatives, representative government, that each town had. The colony itself had two. It's a bicameral house of burgesses, which becomes our foundation for Congress. And what was that House of Burgesses there to do? Well, it was there to hear injustice and grievances and oppression and decide things about the colony, within the colony, instead of having to wait and have all that timeliness pass trying to get the decisions made in England. This becomes the basis of our legislative branch of government. In Connecticut, the Fundamental Orders of Connecticut are written. What you need to know about them is this is the first Constitution. I can remember this because Connecticut starts with a C and so does Constitution. The purpose is to set up government in Connecticut. It's to maintain orderly and decent government. It's all freemen that live in Connecticut that take an oath of fidelity and cohabitate together in jurisdiction. It is a Constitution government. The Maryland Toleration Act. This is a big one that they might put on the test. So remember, Maryland was started by the Catholics, by Lord Baltimore, so they would have religious acceptance, but they also had religious toleration or acceptance of other religions in their colony. So if you can remember that toleration means you tolerate other people and religions, then you know exactly what the Maryland Toleration Act is about. It is the people of Maryland, and it establishes the freedom of religion. So that way, people can have religious freedom in the colony, regardless of what religion you are. This was also important because it's the first time that they start laying out a monetary punishment for crimes instead of just a punishment by inflicting either a whipping or an embarrassment or imprisoning them. And that is the basis for our criminal justice system today. We do have monetary fines and punishments, and we also have ones that rehabilitate or punish or incarcerate people. But most of the time, the Maryland Toleration Act is asked the question about religious freedom. The English Bill of Rights took place in 1689. At the same time, the American colonists were demanding certain rights and freedoms from the English government. The people of England were asking the same things as well. So this happened in England. And this was actually the members of Parliament, which is England's legislative body, very similar to our Congress today. And what they said was, it was to the people of England and the king, and it laid out the freedoms and protections of the people by the government of England. Again, that's John Locke and the idea that government protects life, liberty, and property. This becomes our basis for our U.S. Bill of Rights and our Constitution much later in 1791. But some of the things that they encouraged are spelled out in the English Bill of Rights were that Parliament's job was to legislate, to make laws and execute the laws, to levy money or levy taxes so that the government had money, to keep a standing army and protect England. So those were all things the government did, and the government guaranteed rights to the people and voices to the people. So the people have the right to petition or speak to government, especially if they don't agree with government. We're going to elect representative members to Parliament who will then vote on our behalf. If we don't like them, we will vote them out. We are going to have frequent parliaments. The parliaments have to meet and open. They cannot be held in secret. The people have to know and understand what the parliament is legislating because the power of the government rests in the people. Again, it goes back to John Locke and social contract. And finally, the Zinger case. So John Paul Zinger was a newspaper reporter, and he was writing disparaging things in the paper about the king and the English government and the taxation on the colonies. In return, the English government did not like that John Paul Zinger was writing disparaging things about the government in the paper, and they wanted to silence him. And Alexander Hamilton, who becomes our Secretary of Treasury, was the lawyer for Zinger. This was a judge and jury trial, and the purpose was to defend John Peter Zinger and the idea of the freedom of the press, which becomes our First Amendment right in the United States government under the Bill of Rights. So what Hamilton argues is that government is like a river, and that the river can overrun its banks if we have too much rain. So in other words, government stays in its banks, but sometimes government tries to supersede its powers and overrun it. And who has the only way to protect us from just being swept away by the flood? The people, the power of the people. People give the power to the government, and if the government does not obey the will of the people have the right to take that away from the government. The people have the right to criticize their government in either freedom of speech or freedom of press. You cannot just say false things without backing it up. That's libel and slander. But you can say your opinion and you can back it up with facts. This becomes the basis of all your social media today, that you can express your opinions and your beliefs, and you can criticize the United States government, and that is not hurting anyone to express your opinions. So this is very important because this becomes your First Amendment right. So in class, you were to create with your group, after you analyzed your document, a poster with the name of the document and a brief description of it. So think about the significant things I just talked about in this video, and maybe a symbol to represent it or a catchphrase. These will be hanging in class if you complete them in time before your quiz on Friday, and hence you'll be able to use them on your quiz on Friday and your tests next Friday if you have them completed. So make sure that you put the significance somewhere on your poster, either in a picture or in a representation, so that your classmates will understand that. And then make sure you've looked at both the video of the 13 colonies and their significance and the documents and their significance, both for the quiz Friday and the test next Friday. Good luck.